Welcome to How to Become a Literary Agent. Have you ever wondered exactly what a literary agent does? Do you want to become one or learn how agents got from book lovers to professional champions of as yet unpublished books? Do you want to become a literary agent yourself? Today's panel has 3 literary agents here to answer all those questions and more. Please welcome Sandra Proudman. Sandra Proudman is a Mexican-American author of unabashed Latinx stories and literary associate living in the heart of California. When not busily immersed in all things publishing, you can find her spending time with her amazing husband, an adorable preschooler, catching up on all her shows, and baking 5-star pies. She is the author of the YA fantasy Salvacion, out fall 2024 from Wednesday Books, and the editor of the Latinx anthology Relit 16 Latinx Remixes of Classic Stories, out winter 2024 from Inkyard Press. Connect with her on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Sandra Proudman, and on her website, sandraproudman.com. Please also welcome Hannah VanVels Ausbury, who is an editor and literary agent. She loves working closely with authors and coming alongside them to make their vision come to life on page. Previously, Hannah acquired young adult books at HarperCollins. She lives in Michigan with her spouse, 2 German Shepherds, and 2 cats. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so let's start with, why did you decide to become a literary agent?
Yeah, when I was a child, I don't even remember where I thought books came from. I just thought they magically appeared, and of course loved reading. I just had no idea that the publishing industry existed. And the more I got into writing, the more I learned about publishing, how many people it actually takes to make a book possible, and just the magic behind every single book, from it being in the hands of an agent, it being in the hands of an editor, it being in the hands of the publisher, it being in the hands of the writer who loved it and came up with the idea in the first place. And for me, it was all just so magical when I found out about it. And I'm a writer, and I know firsthand what the publication voyage is like. I know the journey of how hard it is to find and land an agent. And one of my favorite things has always been, as a writer, and the more I got interested in publishing, has been mentorship. And I've been a Pitch Wars mentor. I was an AMM mentor. I was a DB mentor. And all of these opportunities really led me to realize how much I loved working with writers. And I didn't only love reading the books that they were created. I really loved, and I didn't just love writing the books, I really, really loved working with writers and the creatives and the illustrators that were making these books possible. And for me, I really wanted to be a part of that in a bigger way. And I was working in a completely different industry. I was working in commercial real estate, I was working in marketing, I was working in project management. And I really just wanted that shift. And somehow I made it possible. And somehow I'm here, and I'm really excited.
I love that. I think what's interesting is most agents started off as readers. We're all in this business because this is such a passion-driven industry. So I didn't even know what a literary agent was 10 years ago, or when I was a kid. I can't say that it was always my dream to work in publishing, because it wasn't. Like Sandra, before I came into publishing, I was in an entirely different field. I was in academia. So I was working on, I was in graduate school. And then when I finished up graduate school, it's like, well, what am I doing with my life? I'm in my mid to late 20s, and I don't know what I'm doing with my life. My college friends already have jobs and everything like this, and I'm not sure I want to stay in academia. So I had to really interrogate myself about, if I don't want to stay in academia, what do I want to do? And it's like, well, I guess I've always loved reading, and I never really thought about a career in publishing before. I had done some freelance editing on the side, the academic variety, throughout graduate school, which is not super uncommon or anything for grad students. So that kind of really was I just had this moment where it's like, I think I want to try to break into publishing. I started on the editorial side. So I was an in-house editor at HarperCollins, where I worked for a couple of years, and I decided to make the decision to switch to agenting. First, because I wanted the flexibility and of choosing my own hours. I think it's a little bit of an open secret at this point that HarperCollins work conditions are pretty rough. They're pretty strict. And to be totally transparent, I was burnt out for very little pay. Like I said, publishing is oftentimes a passion-driven industry, which can mean low pay. So I wanted a little bit more freedom and a little bit more flexibility. So I made the jump from agenting, or from editing to agenting, right at the start of the pandemic. And one of the things that I really love about it is being able to work on a wider variety of projects at HarperCollins or any imprint. You represent the house and you represent the house tastes, and so you need to cater your list to your house's specific brand. Agenting, however, you have more flexibility and more freedom. So while I was just doing young adult at HarperCollins, agenting, I work from everything from picture books to adult horror. So I love being able to really advocate for my authors and to work on such a wide variety of content.
Great. Those are both, excuse me, those are both really interesting stories one to come from like the writer side and one to come from the editing side.
Yeah.
So for those who aren't sure or think they know, but maybe don't, what does a literary agent do? In effect, what are the job responsibilities of an agent?
Yeah, and I think the responsibilities really vary depending on who you are and your house and XYZ factors. But for me, a literary agent is truly the person who is the project manager for writers and illustrators. I really see it as a mix of representing and advising your authors and illustrators on their work, getting that work into the hands of publishers that will be the best fit for them, and negotiating the best deal for them for those projects. And then really on the back end, helping with the project management again, in terms of making sure that the payments are invoiced for, that they arrive, that they are accurate, and then doing it all over again for their next project. And I think that's kind of an overarching idea for me.
Yeah. A literary agent really, they wear a lot of hats. And, like Sandra said, I think it largely depends on where you are in your agency career. If you're co-agenting with someone more senior than you, if you have your own list. So I think a literary agent's their primary job is to be the business mediary between writer and publisher. Most traditional publishers, require an agent to submit to them. So the writer agent relationship is first and foremost a business one. Like Sandra said, I also do a lot of keeping my clients on track with different projects to make sure they are meeting deadlines. I think part of that also is helping to guide their career. Your agent is landing book deals for you, letting you focus on your writing so you're not pitching yourself to different publishers. They're reviewing your manuscript and helping you prioritize your different projects based on where the market is. And probably most importantly is they are getting you paid. They're negotiating your contracts. They're organizing licensing deals, subrights. Some agents coordinate speaking engagements, not all do. So those are, I think, the things that a literary agent handles, the business matters of the writing.
All right. So then where does one start with becoming a literary agent? Are there specific education or job requirements?
Yeah, I don't, necessarily think that there are any specific job requirements or specific education requirements. For me, the best place that I always recommend starting is just finding an internship at an agency, especially if you aren't as familiar with the editorial side, or in general, the agenting side, right? And the reality is that this is still a sales job, and the sales industry and the agenting industry in general is still very dependent on mentorships and learning from somebody who's senior from you, who can show you the ropes, who can introduce you to editors in this case, or imprints, etc., who can show you how to properly negotiate a contract, so you're making sure that you're not making mistakes for your clients. I think that's the best place to always start, is learning from somebody who already has made, unfortunately, probably made some mistakes, and learning from those mistakes will help you get set up the best way that you can. And so always finding a mentorship, always finding a mentor, I think is the best way to start. And, if you do have any type of connections in the industry, if you're a writer, if you're a book blogger, I think those are things that are helpful. If you know the industry, if you're part of the community, I think those are really great ways to get started and kind of building your name, and building some familiarity with your name in the industry. But I don't think that those things aren't needed. And I think the biggest thing is just that you're an avid reader, and that you're really interested in the industry. And like Hannah was saying, that it is a lot built on passion, so that you're passionate about the industry. And I think that's the biggest thing that you really, really need, is just a lot of drive and a lot of passion for the publishing industry.
I love that we started with the question of how we became agents, because it shows just how many different and varied paths there are to becoming an agent. There are different publishing programs that you could do in New York. There might be some virtual ones, but I have found that the majority of agents have not done those. Like we were talking about, we all started as readers first. And exactly like Sandra was saying, is this industry is very much based on mentorship. There's no how to become a literary agent class or major at colleges or anything like that. And even coming internally from within publishing, from editor to agent side, there was still quite a bit that I had to learn about the agenting side of things. How to negotiate a publishing contract was something that I initially needed a lot of help with, of red flags to look out for, things like that. Even in terms of editing, and that is also can be pretty mentorship based. Reading widely, of course, helps, and just keeping a track of where the market is, what deals are being made, and things like that. So echoing a lot of what has already been said, I think an internship is a really great place to start. It lets you really see the ins and outs of what it's like to go through the slush pile, getting to know more senior agents, processes for going through the slush pile, for how to compile a submission list, for how to negotiate a contract, for how to guide client careers. Those are things that you really have to learn by doing. And we've all kind of been there. We've all been in square one where we're learning how to do those things. We've all probably made a mistake or two in the course of it. So it's very much a career where it's important for the people who are more senior in it, who are successful, to send the elevator back down for people who are looking to break into the field.
So you both mentioned mentorship is really how the whole industry with agenting is built upon. So what mentorship opportunities exist and should be pursued as a new agent?
Yeah, so there's obviously going to be always, hopefully always internal mentorship opportunities, right? And outside of that, I'm just wrapping up a 6-month mentorship from people of color in publishing. That's been amazing. And then I'm just starting a year-long mentorship with AALA and their Agents of Change program. That's just sounding incredible already. And so if you're a marginalized person really interested in pursuing agents, those are definitely, a couple opportunities to check out. And one of the things that I think we've kind of seen the past 3 years, unfortunately, is less opportunities for writers and mentorship opportunities. Pitchforce is gone, AMM is gone, DB Mentor is gone. But what's really exciting for me is that we've seen an increase in these mentorship opportunities for new agents. And I think on the flip side, that's also going to have a lot of benefits for new writers.
Yeah, agreed. So I think Sandra pretty much covered most of the really solid mentorship programs. I think, again, you can also just look for agencies who are looking for junior agents, because when you are a junior agent or assistant agent, you're just starting out, and it's kind of assumed that you will help someone more senior manage their list while you'll kind of co-agent for a while. So you'll work behind right alongside someone who is more senior. So you get to have a certain degree of independence where you're doing it yourself, but you also have your mentor and the more senior agent who is being like, this is why we do it this way, and this is what we need to look out for here, here, and here. So publishers marketplace and the job board sometimes has things like that, as well as book jobs.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like there are some kind of organizational level, like you said, AALA has a couple mentorships available, but then also you want to look specifically at agencies who offer specific mentorships, or maybe have job openings for junior agents, and you would find those through Publishers Marketplace, or what was the last one?
Book jobs oftentimes
jobs.
has them. I think those are kind of like the two main websites that publishing jobs are posted on.
Okay.
And then I will just quickly add that there are a lot of internship opportunities popping up. I think last year was kind of a really, really big year for internship opportunities. This year, I'm not sure what it'll end up looking like, but summer opportunities are something that pops up, on a yearly basis. And so if you're trying to get into the industry, maybe starting to look around March and April to see if literary agencies are posting their summer internships is kind of a good thing to keep in mind too.
Okay, great. Well then, moving on from like the kind of nuts and bolts of how to get started, you also mentioned that it is a sort of a primarily sales job, right? You're handling lots of business and you are trying to sell your clients' books. So what personality type fits well with literary agent work, so people can, know whether they should keep continue to pursue something like this, or if it's maybe not going to be as good of a fit?
Yeah, I will say, you don't have to be a type A personality. You don't even have to feel like you're an extrovert at all. Like I've been a long time introvert, but one of the things I love is talking about books. And so I think when you find a subject matter that you really enjoy talking, it doesn't matter what personality type you are. It's more of just being comfortable talking to different people, and different clients, and just being really interested in the subject matter. And at the end of the day, if you're really interested in publishing, if you're really interested in talking to and helping writers, I think that your personality type will fit in a certain way. And I do think you have to be at least comfortable talking to people, and comfortable talking on Zoom. But I wouldn't necessarily worry too much if you're like type A versus like more laid back or more of an introvert.
Yeah, agreed. I myself am very introverted, and I personally hate talking on the phone. Like if I have to make a phone call, count me out. But talking face to face, like talking on video calls, I find feels more natural. It feels more like I'm having coffee and a more casual conversation with someone like that. So you can definitely, find ways to network that works for you. I think it is important to have patience for any kind of publishing job, whether you are a writer, an editor, or an agent. Things move at a snail's pace in the publishing industry. So I feel like if you are not patient, you will soon be forced to learn patience just because of how long things take. Writers experience this when they are querying for so long, but then they are, waiting on submission with their agent, waiting for editors to read. The book sells, then you're waiting for the book to come out, or you're waiting until you can announce it. And those timelines can be years long of waiting. So I also think it takes resilience to be an agent as well. I don't want to say it takes like a don't give up kind of attitude, because I think that ties in with patience. It's just things take a very long time in the publishing industry, so be prepared for even like your paycheck to not come until months and months after you've actually sold the book, because then you've got to negotiate the contract and all of that. In terms of being organized, I think that's all about finding a system that works for you. When I first started agenting, I was super chaotic, all over the place, but I have since found a system that works for me. So don't worry too much if you're like, oh, I'm not the type A person. I'm not super organized. Sometimes you struggle with details, is when you do find a system that works for you, or again, rely on the systems that your agency already has put in place or your mentors use. It can be really helpful.
Okay. So it sounds like, again, mentorship can help with some of the help fill out anywhere your like inherent personality traits might need a little boost. Every job has those though, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So what aspects of a literary agent's job are lesser known or a surprise to new agents?
Yeah, I mean, something that's been, surprising to me in a really positive way is just how I think, with writing sometimes, and I think when I first thought about agenting, I thought maybe it would be a little bit more lonely. And one of the things that I've realized is how much of a team effort it usually is, or hopefully it is, with your agency. Everybody at Got and Zachary Literary Agency, we're constantly talking, we're constantly helping each other, we're constantly going to each other for questions. And I think that's been something that's been really, really positive for me, that I think is a little bit lesser known, is how much you can actually build a really strong team, and how much you can actually come into a team that really becomes your family. And so you don't have to do things alone. And I think that's something that's like a really good feeling. And I know as a writer, that's kind of the same thing, is finding your people is a big thing in writing. And I think finding your people is equally important in agenting. And there's just such a huge community, even outside of your individual agency. And I think that's so cool. And I think it's so cool that agents have their own networks and their own systems and their own community. And I think it's beautiful.
I love that answer, Sandra. I think that's something that I actually hadn't thought about. When I was an editor, it's like, yeah, I was like plugged into the editorial side of things. I had agent contacts, of course, but now on the agent side of things, I feel like I'm in so many different group chats and, Slack or Discord groups that are specifically dedicated to agenting. And it's people who are, not competing with one another. It very much feels like a community where it's like, hey, I spoke to this editor and they're really looking for a project like this. Or, hey, has anybody ever worked with this publisher and can give me some tips on what their contract looks like, or what they're like to look to work with. So that's something I feel more plugged in than ever as an agent. One unexpected thing for me when I became an agent was how much of my job would a lot of times feel like writing therapy for my clients. Again, it's I think a big part of being an agent is managing client expectations, and writers tend to overthink a lot of things. And I get it. With all the long wait times, many of them have waited for such a long time to see their book published. So on the agenting side of things, a lot of times it's like, no, your publisher doesn't hate you because they didn't confirm receipt of the email that you sent. Trust that they're doing their jobs, even if they haven't, even if it's been more than 24 hours since they responded to your email. Or like, I know your contract is taking a while, but that doesn't mean they're going to cancel your contract. It's just very slow. So I think that that's something that I didn't think about before I became an agent, was how much of that of my job would be managing client expectations, and kind of be an ear for them to vent to. And especially with debut authors, is just explaining the publishing process, explaining that the long wait times are normal, explaining that your editor and their team love you, and all of that, and kind of just assuaging a lot of very, very common debut fears.
All right. What expectations should new agents have? Do you have any cautionary tales or lessons learned that would help aspiring agents?
Yeah, and as somebody who just very recently entered the industry, I think agents and writers have this in common is I think they have to always remember to be kind and kinder to themselves. This is an industry that's very, um, you can't always control everything, and sometimes that's really difficult, in terms of just making sure that you're feeling good about the amount of work that you put in and the return that you're getting back. And so I think that's always something, always keep in mind. Just be kind to yourself. And then in terms of cautionary tales, I would say, one of the hard things that's happened to me, starting off, is just that you're never going to be able to sign as many clients as you want to sign. I feel like, and it's the same thing as a writer, you're never going to be able to write all the projects that you want to write, and you kind of just have to learn to make peace with that. And I think learning to make peace with it, sooner than later, helps to really not get your heart broken in terms of knowing that you want to represent a writer or an illustrator, but you just can't. And I think that's very hard right now for writers and illustrators to hear, is when they get passes, it's so hard, but I think it's also very hard for the agent to have to give those passes. And I think it's something that, breaks both sides, the hearts of both sides. And so I think just learning that everybody is doing the best that they can is just the best cautionary tale.
Yeah, I think in terms of expectations is know that it's unfortunately going to take a while for you to get paid and for you to really switch to agenting full time unless you're at an agency that is salaried. And I think very few agencies are salaried. The majority of agencies offer a commission split with their agents. So most agents are independent contractors, and many writers know that's like, oh, the agency takes 15% of a book deal. That whole 15% usually doesn't go to the agent. You're usually splitting it with your agency. So if you're more junior, that might mean you get 5 out of that 15%, and that 10% is going to go for overhead costs. It's going to go be split with the person co-agenting with you, and all of that. As you get more senior, that percentage split will get higher and higher, but it takes time to do that. When I first started agenting, I think everyone kind of, the rule of thumb was that it takes about 5 years before you can really make your career as an agent. Honestly, I think that time has been extended a little bit with just how publishing payout schedules have changed over the last few years, and it's probably closer to like 5 or 7 years. So I think that that's a hard reality of agenting, is that, like, yes, there is money to be made, but it's not going to be for a while. Also, depending on the books you rep, if one of those publication dates, or if one of those payment dates are tied to publication, but you sold a graphic novel, which has a very long production schedule because it's entirely illustrated. So that publication payment is not going to hit for 3 years. So I think that's why you'll find, frankly, that why a lot of agents have day jobs, and why agenting is kind of something that they do after their day job for a little while. So I think that is a little bit of a harsh, a harsh reality that agents face. So knowing that, I think it's also important to be mindful of your limits. Querying is hard right now for writers, and agents. We love writers, and we feel so sympathetic towards the querying trenches. Like Sandra said, we want to take on as many clients as possible, and we want to prepare as many potential writers to help them get agented. But oftentimes it's just not realistic. When I first started out agenting, I'm like, I want to give everybody like personalized feedback. I hate sending rejections, but at the very least, I can give them pointers on their writing, or what's not working in their sub package. But there are honestly just not enough hours in the day, when you are paid on commission, and when you are paid when your client gets paid. You're not paid when that future client, or like some client that you passed on gets rep or anything. And even if you did help them, that feels really good. So it's just being mindful of where you're allocating your energies. You're doing a lot of free work up front. So just being mindful of that.
I think that's probably the thing that at least as writers don't think about, that the querying portion on your end is also essentially free work. You're not getting paid until you've prepared a manuscript with a writer and sent it to sub and it's been accepted, and now you're way down the line. So yeah. Okay, so you did mention that most agents seem to have another full-time job. So how does a new or even established agent balance another full-time job and or family obligations in life outside of agenting?
Yeah, and this is an interesting question, I feel like, 'cause I think the sad reality is sometimes, like, we don't, right? I think the reality is sometimes it's impossible, and it's, I think, across publishing. Publishing kind of has trouble with this, on the writer end, sometimes it's impossible on the editor's end, sometimes it's impossible on the agenting end, sometimes it's impossible, and it's just, again, I think learning to just be kind to yourself and learning that there are things that can wait till tomorrow. There are things that have bigger priority, your health, your family, and just making sure that you're always allocating at least a bit of your time to the things outside of publishing that do matter to you and that are important to you. I think those are kind of the biggest things. And really just being, I'm pretty good at being firm about these are my work hours, right? And outside of that, I'm not going to be working unless I have a little bit of free time where I'm just sitting there and I want to like answer a client email back or something of that sort. But I try to be as firm as I can with my time, because again, like Anna mentioned, a lot of our work is for free, right? And so a lot of our work, and when there's a position that is arranged that way, I think it's really important to have your boundaries and to set expectations in terms of what you're going to get done, and everything else can get pushed back. Um, uh, and for me, I at least I know like Sundays are a day where I want to spend it with my family. I know in general, the weekends are days when I want to spend it with my family. And so I really try to do the grind during the week. And some things that have helped me outside of making sure I'm just working during my working hours have been, I actually use technology to my advantage. I have my computer or Word read queries back to me and pulls back to me, and so I'm able to do things like cleaning my house at the same time, or folding laundry at the same time, or going for a walk or exercising at the same time. And so those are kind of ways where I found little time savers. um, and so I think just being strategic in the way that you're time saving as well. And I think one of the things that I'm trying to do right now too, as I'm entering agenting, is I'm trying to get organized right now at the very start, instead of trying to get organized 6 months from now or when I sell something. And so I think when you start the position, as much as you can organize ahead of time, I think it'll save you time on the back end. And that's also where the mentorship opportunities come into play, because one of my mentors is super organized. And so I'm really hoping to learn from her how she's been organizing all of her stuff. And so I can kind of copy it a little bit. And I think those are kind of ways that you can help yourself at least a little bit, because it is a position where it's all dependent on how much work you want to take on. And of course, you're not getting paid until you sell something. And so I think, especially as a new writer, you want to take on a lot of work, but it's also something that could get stressful very quickly and something where you don't want to burn out. And so I think just always being mindful of your time and respectful of yourself.
Yeah, I think that those boundaries are key. When I first started agenting, I really struggled with that. And it's something I think even now that I'm several years in is still always something that I need to remind myself of. Like Sandra said, I think it is an across publishing problem, where there is never a shortage of work to be done. And it's so hard because when you are so passionate about the work that we do, it feels you're like, this is good work, this is worthy work that deserves to be done. But at the same time, it oftentimes comes at the expense of family relationships or taking care of your mental health. What helps for me personally is to remember why I left my editorial position, and that was because of burnout. So now whenever I do that, I just remember that why, where it's like, Hannah, you left your old job because you were getting burnt out. Don't fall into that pattern again. So set up sustainable patterns that work, and it's very helpful for me to remind myself that there is no such thing as a publishing emergency. So for me, I try to be pretty strict about my business hours, even in terms of when I'm like texting clients back. I let them know. It's like, you guys honestly can like email me or text me at any time of the day, but I'm not responding until 8:30 a.m. the next morning if you're texting me after hours. So it's things like that. And again, reminding yourself and your clients that most things in publishing don't need an immediate response. It's never the world is on fire. We are not the medical field. We are not doctors or anything like that. And while making books is an important business, it's hardly ever an urgent business. So while the work will probably pile up, I do think that it's, again, important to prioritize your clients, yes, but also prioritize yourself, because you are no good to your clients if you are burnt out, if you are not functioning at your best.
So switching gears from like balancing life, one thing that does seem to be clear is that you have to have a network in order to, sell books and get your clients, being on sub. So how important is networking to an agent's job? Are there tips for how to better network within the literary world?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you mentioned, like it's so important to build that network and that community. And it's all just about um matchmaking a little bit, right? It's about learning what editors are out there because there's so many wonderful editors, there's so many wonderful imprints. And for me coming into this position, again, as a newer agent, like one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm scheduling just as many editor calls as I can because I really want to learn not only the interest of the imprint, but the interest of the editor. And I really want to make sure that I'm matchmaking as well as I can. And it's something that I'm really interested in, especially knowing how little time everybody has. And I think that's what really makes networking so important is because everybody has such limited time that you want to make sure that those connections that you build are genuine, that you're really paying attention to what people are saying, that you're really building that knowledge base of learning just as much about the industry as you can and the editors in that industry and the imprints in the industry and the publishers in the industry. And you can't do this position without it, right? And I think it's also really important because when you send submissions out, you don't want to end up on the bottom of piles. You don't want to be somebody that nobody recognizes. You want to make sure that your name, just like in the writing world, you want to make sure that your name almost becomes a brand, and your literary agency kind of is a brand that people are familiar with, and you can't get that without networking. You can't get that without going out and reaching out to people. And you can't have the expectation that people are going to reach out to you. Sometimes they do, and it's amazing. But again, because everybody has such limited time, I think you have to be proactive. And that's the biggest thing, is just being proactive and reaching out to people. And you can do that knowing that people want to talk about books, and talking about books is one of the favorite things in the industry. Everybody loves talking about what they're interested in. And so I think in terms of tips, that's probably my biggest tips, is to not be fearful about reaching out to people. Because the worst that can happen is that most people will get back to you. Maybe it'll take a week or two. But the worst thing that could happen is that people say, I don't have time right now, but let's schedule something 2 months from now. And I think that's something amazing to take advantage of.
Yeah, networking is so important in terms of matching up your client with a good editor or a good imprint. Like Sandra said, be fearless when reaching out. Sometimes they're like, I'm too busy for a call, but here is an up-to-date manuscript wish list of projects that I'm hoping to acquire this season. And those themselves, I'm like, oh, perfect. This is so valuable. I can then go back and share that with my agency, with my agent group chats, things like that. So I think that that's also something that is important. We talked earlier about how agents really do have kind of an online community, and I think that's also something that can alleviate some of the stress off of networking with editors, particularly if you're not based in New York or anything, where I'm like, I don't have the time, the hours in the day to have 50 editor calls, but you know what? I had one. I'm going to share that information. Sandra had one. She's sharing that information. So it can really, I think, behoove you to have agent friends or colleagues who are also going to be sharing, sharing their networks with you, and things like that.
Okay then. So you don't have to be in New York to do your networking anymore, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, now I'm in California, and it's been amazing. Yeah. And the Zoom and the Google Meets are your best friends, I swear.
Yeah, I think that that's something that is really positive about agency, and something that really drew to me too, is it's like you can pretty much do it wherever you want. You kind of have to be like okay with working on Eastern time zones for phone calls and things like that. But that's usually not a huge accommodation that needs to be made. And you can send an email at any time of the day.
Okay. So then what do you enjoy most about your work now that you've been agenting for a little while?
Yeah, I mean, I still really enjoy working with my clients the most, and getting a chance to just hop on with them and talk about a project, or get an edit letter back to them, or taking them, building that submission list. And so that's really been my favorite thing still, is just working with the clients. And there's just so many amazing and talented writers and illustrators out there right now that it's just amazing. And on the flip side, I have really, really been enjoying meeting new editors and getting a chance to hop on with editors. And I always love that kind of matchmaking process. It's always going to be one of my favorite things.
Yeah, the clients are definitely my favorite spot too. While it is a professional business relationship, writing is something that's so inherently personal. And as agents, we're of course very respectful of that. So it's always a huge win for us to get to celebrate client wins. And for me, those often come with different milestones for publication. So putting a book on sub, and the excitement that comes, it's like, oh, your book is out in the world. Getting to call an author when an offer comes in. Seeing the book's cover for the first time, things like that I get to share in with my client and be like, yes, we did. This is something we did together. This is a product of our hard work and the teamwork that we put in. This is the product of you trusting me with your book, and here it is going out into the world. And I think that is something that is so special.
That does sound special. So, in wrapping up, because we are getting close to the end of our time, what questions do you wish you had asked when you started down the career path to become a literary agent, and what answers do you have for those questions now?
Yeah, as a newer agent again, I'm curious to see what Hannah's going to say to this one, because I feel like I don't have any major questions. I will say that one of the things that just kind of thinking about this question, before I changed career paths, I was really scared. I was in a career where I was getting paid pretty decently. I didn't like it at all, but it's been my family, and that was the important part, right? And I think for me, the question right now is just, did I make the correct change? And I think that was still the question, 2 weeks into the shift. And right now, where I'm 2, 3, 4, 5 months into this career change, I'm so excited, and I'm so happy that I did make the move. And I think for what I want to leave everybody who's interested in becoming an agent is, if you're scared to make this career path change, if you're scared of failing, but that you will love it, and that you will have so much fun, and that it's worth giving a go, to just give it a try, and just go for it. And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now, where I know that the correct answer was yes, I absolutely should have made this change. And that's something that I'm proud of myself for doing.
Oh, that is such a cute answer. I love that. That's like so encouraging and inspiring. I think one of the questions that I had when I first became an agent is, how do I know I can trust my taste in if something is good? I feel like when I was an editor, that was something I was asking myself then, but you had a little bit of a safety blanket, because you're like, this agent who I respect, whose taste I respect, whose list I respect, I already thought that this was good. so it's like, okay, they already said it was good, so now it's just up to me to see if I like it too. But when you're an agent and you're the first one going through it, you're like, is that good? Is like this book good? Is it of my taste? Is it something that I can sell? So just having faith in your instincts, having faith that you're like, I wasn't really into this, to know it's okay to pass on it then, and don't try to force yourself to be like, I really want to like this, but I just don't like it enough. Or there's nothing wrong with this, it's solid, but I just don't love it enough. To be okay, to understand that not every book is meant for you to rep, and that you won't be the best champion for that book that you were not head over heels in love with. And then on the flip side of that is then, if you truly, you're reading a submission, whether one of your clients' projects or something from the slush pile, you're like, oh my gosh, I love this. I could read it over and over and over and over, but I'm not sure how to place it. Is again, just like trust your gut. Whenever I am really digging a submission, I always sleep on it. Always. I always, then will, check Publishers Marketplace to see what kind of books are selling, to see if I can imagine where this is going to go. And this is something that has gotten much easier for me the longer I've been in agenting. When I was still quite new to agenting, I'm like, okay, I really love this book. I love it. I love it. I love it. But then actually going from love to I have a sales plan for this is something that just takes some confidence, mentorship, and in a good plan. But I think again, trusting your initial instinct, where it's like, I love this book, this is good, I want to rep this, to actually repping it, is again just coming back to trusting your taste, and having confidence of your own acumen as a reader.
Well, that all sounds that all sounds good. You have to trust yourself is a big part of this. Well, that concludes all the questions I have. Well, then I'd like to thank all of you for joining me today, and I hope everyone has a great weekend at Right Hive.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.